Hi everyone, so wonderful to see you and to spend time with you. My name is Katerina Stoikova. I am the founder and senior editor for Accents Publishing. We are independent press in Lexington, Kentucky. Periodically, we bring you an author of a book published by Accents Publishing and focus on this author and that book for an hour. So far, we've featured Lita Kendrick and her book And Luckier. And then we featured The Junkie Who Loved Horses, an anthology, poems by formerly incarcerated men, edited by Sonia de Vries. We featured Open Burning, both in soft cover and hardcover by Christopher McCurry. Then we had an event for Masked Man Black by Frank X. Walker. Then we had a big celebration and kind of like a longish reading featuring, people who have contributed to all 4 issues of Literary Accents. Then Karen Schubert read from the Compost Reader. And now the book of today is Lock Her Up by Tina Parker. This is Tina's 3rd full-length book. I have read all of them. They are all excellent books, though this one is my favorite. I like this book in any way I could like a book. First, notice the excellent image on the front cover. It features a painting by Sherry Weschler, and she's here with us. And Tina will introduce her a bit later. And we'll get to know her a little bit. I like the idea behind the book, Lock Her Up. I like giving the voiceless voices. I like learning facts from this fictionalized book. I like that it took research to write it and edit it. I like its feminist message. I like the political flavor to the title. I like the characters. I like seeing the actual handwriting on historical documents. I think many of you have the book already and have noticed that. On a personal level, I quite like the person, the poet who wrote this book. I like her commitment to the craft of poetry and the follow through needed to develop her talents and ground her ideas. Her alignment with her values, which I've seen over and over throughout the years. Tina and I go way back. We are proud to add Tina Parker to our family of authors and can't wait to read what she writes next. In Lock Her Up, Tina Parker gives voice to the women from the not too distant future. Wow, I don't know why I said future, but actually what I meant to say is not too distant past. Who were not allowed to make decisions about their own bodies and mental health. In this thought-provoking collection, Parker brings to life 3 characters and highlights their stories through poems and research. We grow in care and concern about Mattie M. Roberts, Rachel Wells and Emma Darby, and are able to relate to their struggles and circumstances. Carrie Gunter Seymour says the following. Tina Parker's haunting new collection is an examination of the platitudes, misdiagnoses, and treatments administered to women who needed succor, not restraint, understanding, not punishment, women who had been set aside by their families or bored husbands, were abused, widowed, or their children dead or taken from them. This poet has done her research. Reader, you will wince, you will curse, you will weep. Marianne Worthington, who is here also among us now, says, these poems are timeless, from the hateful recent political mantra of the collection's title to the mostly unchanging position of women in a patriarchal society. These poems speak to contemporary audiences about the suppression of women's voices. With regularity, we're still dismissed, spit upon, raped, and shushed. And if we carry extended grief of losing children or rebel against traditional gender roles or express hatred of marriage and religion, we're still labeled high-strung, unsettled, flaunting hysteria. Parker's haunting poems unlock and venerate our foremothers who were right troublesome and at times excited, so that we can all be reminded, see, I am here. Please tell them I was here. Kevin Nance wrote a review for Undermain, and in the last paragraph he said, Lock Her Up is a compact masterpiece, easily one of the finest works of Southern and Appalachian literature in any genre that I've ever read. Parker is to be saluted for this great achievement. And so, please help me salute Tina Parker, the author of the latest Accents publishing title, Lock Her Up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with two poems by way of prologue. The first is called The Day They Came for Me. The day they came for me, I sliced open the sun, I walked the tightrope and touched the moon. I drank stars that day. I danced with a tree and climbed into thunder. The day they came for me, I cartwheeled into the sea and sang open the snow. Southwestern Lunatic Asylum. The Southwestern Lunatic Asylum, a setting poem. Get me out, they cry, day after day, get me out of this place. They walk too heavy, their voices swell my rooms. Disturbed, leprous, sick. They should know to tiptoe. They should know to speak in whispers. My walls throb, I absorb their wounds and hold them until darkness descends. So that's the setting poem, this book that we are celebrating. It comes from research into patient records from an asylum near where I grew up. So this asylum in Marion, Virginia, it's one of the few that is still open today of these really expansive, beautiful places built in the 1800s. It's still open today as a hospital. And so I'm going to show you all, I'm going to say thank you, my listeners tonight, for being here. We are all suffering Zoom fatigue, and I'm so grateful to you all for being here with me. I want to give you, if we were in person, we would have snacks, raffle tickets, prizes. But what I'm going to do is give you some images. I'm going to share my screen. And I want to show you just a series of images. These are courtesies from the Library of Virginia. So what you're seeing now is a patient record. So a little bit of eye candy to go along with the hauntings, right? So these poems come from, a girl who grew up in the shadow of this asylum. That's me, the girl poet who loves haunted houses. who watched Unsolved Mysteries. I cut my teeth on reading Revelation. Loved to read ever since, and kind of came to be a young adult understanding that I'm from a place called Appalachia, which I didn't know as I was little, but has become an obsession and is woven into everything that I write. And then also women's roles. So the role of being a daughter, a mother, a sister, a wife, all of that is woven into my work. So that's the book we're celebrating. And I want you to kind of see some images as I read poems. So I will read, kind of as we go along, a poem called Pleas for Admission, because I want you to hear kind of alongside what you're seeing is a patient record, kind of documenting a woman's behavior in asylum. So these are pleas for admission from the men who would have had the women committed in that time. Pleas for admission. Will you take my mother? She is widowed, violent, vulgar. She eats too much and chaws tobacco. Will you take my daughter? She is wild, incoherent, frolicsome, and restless. Will you take my wife? She is lazy, obstinate, indisposed, and takes no interest in her home. So next I'm going to introduce you to one of the characters. This is Rachel Wells, a mother committed to asylum by her husband. Rachel Wells, age 32 years, has had 4 children. Her derangement is chiefly hatred of marriage and religion. One of her children died from drinking whiskey and turpentine. They call me filthy, covered in vermin. They call me filthy, covered in vermin. These bugs I carry, the ones I once fought. I shaved the boys' heads, but hers I could not. Day after day after day, I went through her hair, pulled strand by strand through the split nail of my index finger. There was no such thing as time, only the click, 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 as I flicked the bugs out, only my hand resting on her head. Bath rules. Number 1, under no circumstances is a patient to be bathed unless 2 attendants are present. 2, in preparing a bath, the cold water is to be turned on first. 3, not more than 1 patient is to be bathed in the same water. 4, no brush of any kind should be employed in bathing a patient. 5, under no pretext is the patient's head to be put under water. There is room. They examined it, said it was full, things in there they cannot name. The first, a ring, the second, an apron. No, the first was an apron, and undershirts, gowns, slippers, dresses, a trunk. I'd never worn the apron. They'd not believe if I told them where I buried the ring. They checked the box next to quiet. They named my womb tender. Hey, I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to switch our slide to a different image. So I want to show you all the legal process that was about being committed to asylum in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So I think I have to stop share and advance it forward. There it goes. Do you see a patient record, state of Virginia? Yes, okay. So this is again courtesy of the Library of Virginia. This is an actual primary source. And so in this time period, I mean, not that far back, if we think about it, it was a legal process, and the men in a woman's family in her community would come together and make this decision about her being committed to an asylum. So in that vein, I'm going to introduce you to the character named Maddie Roberts. Her age is 19 years old. Maddie Roberts, single, just from school. Her father has considerable property and his daughter here as a pay patient. She is constantly moving and throwing herself about. No restraint has been imposed. Testimony. They told the judge I sat before an open fire, fell right into it, but wasn't a hair on my head singed. They recalled my vision, a prophetess wearing clothes the color of rotten grasses. Grounding sage to a fine powder, they said I put it in their tea, told them to drink and be sanctified. Said their throats burned, claimed they could not speak. The minister said he'd seen many slain in the spirit, but not me. Said I was different, that he felt directed to sign as witness. My dear sir, have a commission of lunacy summoned at once and have Maddie examined and send in depositions, and we will readmit her as soon as possible. There is room. We are surprised, as she has had no marked incidents of insanity for over 12 months. Yours truly, Robert J. Preston, Superintendent. So that's from a letter from the superintendent. So I was able to see primary sources, but only one side, which was what the superintendent wrote to the family. And that's like a treasure trove for the poet to think about what was the other side of the story, like what were the letters from the family back home. And so for that one, I'm going to switch and show you the letter, like the actual archival primary source book I was looking at. All right, so this would be, says letters. Are we good? How are we doing out there? Do you guys see a book called Letters? Okay. This was at the Library of Virginia. I had on the white gloves. And this is like the actual, 1901 Letters of the Superintendent book that I was looking through as part of my research there. So to go with this image, I'll read a series of poems called Answered Letters. So again, this is the one-sided story of what the superintendent is writing to the families back home. Answered Letters. Dear Sir, your daughter, your wife, your mother has not improved any. Dear Sir, she is right troublesome and at times excited. We do not know whether or not she will ever improve. Neither do we promise a cure. Dear Sir, she has much to try her temper. In our opinion, she is yet very insane. All right, so I'm pausing again. That's that series. And I have 2 more poems I want to read. And I hope y'all are thinking of, questions you want to ask. I love that part. And let's see, I'm going to switch to my last image. So this one is from a source that was really inspiring to me. It's from a book called Asylum. It's a photographic essay. And it has, a photographer, like I said, the asylum that inspired these poems is one of the few that's still open. So that means many of them across our country are just in this state of decay. And some of them, and depending on where they are becoming these upscale shopping centers or apartments. Right. So this is one of those photographs. And I became fascinated. I hope you can see like a series of doors, right? And so that's what I wanted to show to read these last 2 poems for you. Release. The minister says I'm alive through grace, says they may never know what rendered me silent. He tells them to pray. The Spirit gives several messages in other tongues. Praise the Lord, they shout. Praise the Lord. The women place a Bible under my pillow. I dream my voice returns. I point to the minister, but no one listens. Arrival. God save me. God could not. Safe here, away from him, or nearer. A door. Another door after door, and I open my bags. They've emptied me. They've taken her. God, be with me. Let me keep the baby. I've not had time to finish her blanket. The final door opens. Okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a minute to say thank you to you all again for being here on this evening when you could be doing so many other things. Thank you. And I have to say thank you to Accents Publishing and Katerina for bringing this book to the world, to an audience. If you have the means, support your small presses, your small independent presses like Accents Publishing, please do. Lock Her Up is a Kentucky Proud book, right? Like, it's inspired by research that was funded by the Kentucky Foundation for Women, and poems that were nurtured in the Workhorse Poetry Gauntlet, and a Kentucky Press, Accents Publishing. So big thank yous all around. And I want to now also say, I'm going to kind of share the cover of the book and segue into talking about that a minute. So I've got to I'm going to switch my image here. So now you see the cover, I hope, right? We good? Yes, thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you. Also goes to our cover artist, Sherry Weishler, and she is here with us this evening. I want to introduce her, and as I do so, participants, just be thinking of questions you have for myself or for our cover artist. We would love to give you the answers. Like, that's part of what we enjoy so much about this Accents book discussion format. So our cover artist is here. Sherry Weishler is branded as Sumo Bunny. She is a figural narrative painter who exhibits nationally and internationally. She's the owner of Coastal Contemporary Gallery, which was founded in 2018 and is in Newport, Rhode Island. Right, so talk about the geographical reach of Zoom. I'm going to take that as a win in the pandemic that we're all together tonight. Her gallery represents over 30 national and regional artists. So think about that. She's, representing and making a way for artists. She herself has been featured in over 30 solo exhibitions and 40 plus group shows. So one of those exhibits was where I encountered her work. That was through Pen and Brush. If you haven't looked them up, they support women artists in all genres. So I saw her work online. Like, I've never seen it in person. The moment I laid eyes on it, I knew this was the right cover for this collection of poetry. And I'm honored that it came to be so. So thank you, Sherry, for being here. That is kind of my introduction, and I will let you speak with us a little bit.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So that was my cat you just saw. She just decided right now would be a good time to introduce herself too. So yeah, I don't know, Tina, if you had seen that piece prior to my sending it, or if you had seen it on the website, but the two pieces that she had seen through Pen plus Brush.
I saw them on Facebook, Pen plus Brush. That's how I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just random scrolling.
And the two that you saw, the two that were there are from the same series as this painting. So this painting is, the original is in California now, 60 inches high, 48 inches wide, and the other two that were at Pen and Brush were the same size and from my communication series. But it is a lot about so the communications, past, present, future, and it incorporates stone, geometric shapes, draping, the female form. And in this instance, in particular, so I was really happy that you chose this one with the cage around the stones, because the other ones did not have that. it does relate to my personal life, as often, you know, we have those threads that our art links outward and inward. Yeah, so it does speak a lot to female strength and things that women have gone through this, you know, centuries, and then it also talks about our communication and the stone in particular, because so many messages have been set in stone, and stone has been used so often to carry messages like eternally, just, you know, still down from ancient Egypt and previously. And so I was really excited that you picked that one. I think it is really appropriate for your book. And the head, often in the Greek and Roman statues, would be broken off or stolen because the neck was the weakest point, and the head sort of drifting up there as the, you know, for the identity of the human, rests on top of this pile of stones that's been caged and set on top of this female form that's standing relaxed but strong in her position. And then the coloring of it is, it's delicate, but, and there's this strange green dress that she's wearing. It's almost like this, it's still beautiful, the color, but it's got this sort of sick coloring to it. So there's a mix of beauty and oddness to it. So I think that you made a really good choice for your cover.
Let me say that I got tremendous response about the cover, and Tina, probably you did too. I got an email from someone in Bulgaria who saw the cover and specifically wrote to me that it's a killer cover.
Oh, thank
yeah,
you for telling me that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to mention is that Tina just fell in love with Sherry's work, and she had a set of this one. Oh, how about this one? And this one is so good. But ultimately, I do think that the right cover, the right image was chosen for so many reasons.
Yeah.
So I would like to applaud Tina for her reading, because I don't think we did that. You know, we just launched into conversation. Thank you, Tina. And, you know, that was so good that we saw those images, those historical images, and I enjoyed them all. But I personally was really struck by the folder of personal letters. It's like, wow, I would want to spend a weekend reading those. They would give me ideas for poems. And Sherry is so wonderful that we were able to use your brilliant painting, brilliant image for this book. And what a wonderful marriage of content and form. So I would like to say that now we can ask questions of our brilliant artists. And if you don't have any, well, I was going to say I have a few, but I see that Lita already has a question. Go ahead, Lita. You may have to unmute your mic.
Yes. I'm wondering how you first got engaged with this topic, Tina, and what, you know, drew you to continue with it once you had first gotten involved, once you first had discovered.
It happened that's a wonderful question. I love to think about. It happened in a very unexpected way. So I was just following my obsessions, you know, my rabbit holes of, I was very interested in mental health and, you know, the way motherhood is a time of transition and all of the cultural associations and pressures on that. So I was, you know, reading and thinking about that. And then I started stumbling on how recent and new the whole history of women's health is. period, in general in our country. Women's mental health even more recent. And then it was just kind of merry long time. I started reading everything I could find about hauntings. The story of the Bell Witch of Tennessee is something that my 7th grade librarian introduced me to. And I was at the same time kind of digging into hauntings, digging into women's history, digging into Appalachian culture, and rereading a lot of my books about Appalachian religion. It just came together, in this amazing, perfect storm. And that was at the same time I learned, that I could go and, in Kentucky, the state law is a little bit different. In Virginia, it was a little bit more lenient, which happens to be where I'm from. And I could go look and see these patient record primary sources, like what were the belongings the women had when they came in. It just all started to fall together just from following what I was interested in that time. And it taught me a lot as a writer, like just to let myself kind of wallow in whatever happens to be intriguing to me, or wallow in it, as we said, even if I'm not sure where it's going at first. But thank you for that question.
It's wonderful. Wow. Yeah. I love that you just let yourself be led, and you're interested in motherhood. I remember from your earlier books, and it just is such a natural thing to pursue. So thanks for that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see Maddie M Worthington has question, and then one of the young writers there after that. Go ahead, Maddie M.
One of the things that I've always loved about you, Tina, is how you work with form. You know that from when we were in Letha's class together a long, long, long time ago. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you decided to shape these poems. What were some of the influences that you used and to come to the final way the poems look on the page?
Oh, I love that question. It's one of my favorite things about poetry, because I was let myself be playful in that. So I remember, for like the bath rules, it at first looked very linear, but I just let myself play around with the white space. And so I would just say, like, it was by exploring and letting myself, I would take it into a bunch of different versions with the lines looking different, the columns and the white space all looking different, and decide from there. And another inspiration was just looking at those, like, fill in the blank patient records. And always I'm influenced, like I tell people, that's what I love about poetry, is just growing up, like, this is what you are allowed to say, and this is what you can't say. So all of those are informing it, I think.
Yeah, I like the forms that you included, the forms, and this beautiful way that we see the ghost of those records in the section changes. That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Katerina and I worked on that together. That was a vision. Right when I saw those source, like that old timey, that old record book, I was like, I really want that to be shaded ghost. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
then one of the young writers, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Okay, this one's for my mom, as you know, Tina. So, what made you decide what you wanted for the cover image, and did you have a vision to start with?
No, I mean, I think always things that come very, very last in the process of making this a book of poems would be the title and the cover. So I did not have a vision going in. It just was like this amazing, almost like the planets align, where I was working on the order of the poems in the manuscript. At the same time, like, I just happened to see this exhibit that was on Facebook virtually. It was photos of the artwork. And I was, like I said, scrolling, pandemic scrolling sometimes. And it just jumped out to me. I was like, I know that I want this artist's work. it is kind of, I felt like it was in dialogue with what I was working on. So it's almost like, I think sometimes, I'm a very organized person and I have like my work plan, but sometimes there are just things that are a mystery and they come to us at the right time. And I think that's how it worked with the cover.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Libby?
Thanks. Tina, so one thing that really interests me, because I've been working long-term on a project which involves both research and drawing on memory and so on, there's so much material, and clearly you had access to quite a lot of material. So I'm especially interested in the fact that you created these 3 characters who I understand are kind of composites. It's not, so I wanted you to talk a little more about how you decided to kind of make characters in the first place, and then a little about how you built those characters in your mind, and then decided what kind of poems to do with them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it initially came through seeing patterns in what I was reading and researching. So there was a really long period of time where I was not writing at all. I was just like gobbling up every, eating like candy is what I say, every possible secondary source, primary source, and letting that kind of wash through me. And I was seeing patterns and I was like, this is really the stereotypical pattern of, like this young girl, mother, crone. So I let it kind of arise and evolve out of what I was seeing. And then I started to make the characters. I knew pretty early in the project that there would be these kind of 3 composite characters. But I also knew that I was like having these different persona poems, and it would be a mystery, right? Like it wasn't ever like I made a specific bundle of poems just for this person or just for this person, because there was a lot of overlap and I wanted it to be that way. So that was part of it's what's coming out of the research, and part of it's what am I interested in. Like I always say, it's all kind of filtered through my own autobiographical experience. And that's how I kind of let myself not become blocked as a writer. Like it's okay to filter through what my interests are, what my experience is, and see what comes out. I hope that answers a little bit. That's a great question. Yeah.
I have a question too. Did you have dreams? Did you see any of the characters in your dreams? Or anything about the asylum?
No, I don't recall it in that way, but I let myself just take in whatever, draw on all the things from my childhood, take in whatever, current day psychological thrillers, whether that's I would listen to podcasts, listen to poets on the podcast, watch shows. It definitely was saturated into who I am, but it's been a while. I don't know if I remember about the dreams.
Mm-hmm. And do you still write poems about them? Or did you stop? I mean, sometimes poems sneak in after we close the book, after it's published. So anything like that?
I haven't had that, no. That's very interesting, but no, they're not haunting me to this day.
Libby?
My question is related to the one, your first one, Katerina, that I heard, I guess it's been about a year. We were together at a reading, and you read some of these poems, and I remember you said, because it was this was like right before COVID shut things down, and this was a very joyful gathering, you know, with a lot of high spirits and so on. And I remember you're saying you read a couple, and then you said, "Is everybody okay?" You know, I mean, you recognized that this material was like not the most cheerful, you know, uplifting, etc. And I think it's, you know, your commitment to telling the stories and so on is, you know, is just super important. But what I'm wondering is, how was it for you to be living immersed, you know, in this world in which, in fact, you know, it was not cheerful, and women were, you know, encountering these things, and there's not a neat happy ending, you know, all of that. And you didn't just write one poem, you know, you've spent a lot of time in that universe. So I wondered if you would say a little about sort of the psychology, or how it, you know, did you dream, but how did it affect your thinking? And did you do things that kind of kept you feeling that, you know, what, making art from this is a kind of way of lifting it up, but, you know, coping with that sort of psychological burden of these histories?
Yes, exactly. No, it never felt like a burden to me. It felt like I was uncovering, you know, like that's kind of been since I was a little girl, like cataloging and writing down what was in front of me and what information I see, and trying to maintain and get that story to the forefront. It did not feel like a burden. It felt more like this, you know, this undertaking that was, and also was just bringing together a lot of different passions of my own, and really got me into the kind of that happy artist zone, you know, when we have this vision and it's coming to be. That's more what it felt like. Then, you know, if anything, I would, you know, I love being in that project zone when it's happening like that, right? Yeah.
Mattie M?
Yeah, Tina, one of the most haunting poems in this was the, I think it was called For Admission, that you read a little bit ago. And as I'm listening to that, and I'm wondering if other people have had this response too, but as I was listening to that poem, I thought there would have been various times in my life that I could have made a checklist, and I could have been in the asylum for those particular reasons at various times in my life. And a lot of times when we're writing, we want our readers to engage with what we have and to have empathy for our characters. And I'm wondering if people have responded to that or said anything about that, feeling like they could have been in this situation themselves.
Yes, definitely. I even meant to say that in response to Libby's question. I think that's exactly right. Like I could empathize and I could be like, wow, what would they have done with me back in that time period? You know, like that's part of what's fascinating. And again, not that long ago. And I have had responses like that, like, wow, I would no interest in our home. Like who can relate? Yeah. That's why it was fun to kind of read it in that way especially during this time of a pandemic, you know, like it's wow. But yeah, definitely, I think that's another thing that sustained me through the project, you know.
Thanks, Tina.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Libby.
This is a question for Sherry. Tina mentioned that she looked at other of your work. Was this particular image part of a series that you did, or was it a standalone?
No, this was part of my largest body of work, and it pertains to our communication. So the two that she saw were the same, they were from the same series, and then this one. So I, like Tina was just speaking about, being in that space where you're really, you know, connected and tapped into something and you just get with the flow. That painting, along with the other two that were exhibiting at Pen and Brush, I was in that zone. And I'd go to bed at night and I'd think about them and wake up and work on them. But yeah, it's from that series.
What could you just tell us briefly? What are the other two, and what was your concept for the series?
Well, the concept, it's communications throughout history. So it's really a little bit rowdy human. So I really connect to concepts of other dimensions, quantum, string theory, stuff like that. Really mysterious cosmic connections that we have, and I think in particular that we're sort of collectively becoming more aware of, especially in the pandemic. So the stones were a big part of that work. Stones mixed with the figure, and how we've used stones throughout history to communicate, whether it's a pile of stones to communicate somebody's passing into the next life, or etchings in stone, walls, making parameters, foundations. It's just endless how many ways that we use gravestones. So, and that figure happens to have, I've never put a cage around the stones. I was visiting a local brewery here, and it had all these piles of stones with these cages around them to hold them in. So I guess somebody would come and take a pallet of stone and then go build a wall. And it spoke to where I was at that point in time. I left a 30-year marriage. There are good times and bad times, but I can say that I really relate to the book, the message for the female, what we've been through, what we have to hold together, and being in business, to be a strong woman. Sometimes you have that feeling of, oh, am I being too strong? Like, is that gonna be taken the wrong way? But we still have a long way to go. And so, yeah, I just, when she said she was picking that one, I was like, couldn't have picked better. Mm-hmm. The other two pieces were a little more connected to the communication, what happens in the afterlife. And this one was a little bit more connected to but also what I was going through personally, mm-hmm, and what I was building out of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And I see that Tina has posted Sherry's website. I also posted a link to the book on Accents Publishing website. And we have one last question. That's going to be the last question of the evening. And go ahead. Go ahead, young poet. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
That's okay. My name's Opal, but in the poem that you had, I think it was like the South Lunatic Asylum, of the poem about the lunatic asylum, like it was like speaking about it. You used the word like throb, and that really painted a picture in my mind. Just imagine how like these women here, they were just brought there without their consent, and it just really made me paint an image in my head. So that's probably why you're such a good poet, because you paint images in others' heads. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the fun thing about writing poems from a voice. Like they can come from a voice of a building, a house, a person. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming to this event, to Tina's reading, to Tina's book club event, and spending your time with us and asking questions and listening. We appreciate you. And I am so happy to have met Sherry in person and learn more about her work, and I will look at more of her art. Thank you all.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you.